Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time you visited, I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, it would be great if you could subscribe and like the video for me as well. Today I am doing some art journaling with my Craftascope products in my 6x6 Gina Wakely watercolour journal. The pages are lovely and thick, and I'm starting out today on a background that I've already prepared with some leftover Pearlywink sprays from my last project. I wanted to add a bit more colour with a bit more intensity, so I'm using my Gina Wakely fluid acrylics, which are lovely and heavy bodied, so you can water them down. I've added some magenta and some cheddar, which is one of my favourite colours, and I'm putting them into the bottom left and top right corners, as that's the sort of layout that I really enjoy making. I've added water because they're so thick that they are really good for being able to water down and make a more watercolory effect. I wanted them to spread and drip, and I wasn't really worried where they went. I just wanted to get that colour and brighten up the corners of the pages. Making sure that the paint is really dry, because I'm going to add a peacock blue over the top, and blue and orange, when they are mixed together, because they are opposite on the colour wheels, will make brown, and I want the colours to all keep their lovely bright intensity. Here I'm using the Flower Orbit stencil by Craftascope. They're really good quality. I enjoy using a stencil brush with my stencils because I find I personally get the best effect with them, and I don't get too much seepage underneath. I also make sure I only put out a small amount of paint at a time, because you can always put out a little bit more. I don't like the waste, but also I find then that I don't put too much on the brush, which is when I usually get the most seepage underneath, if I've loaded up my brush with too much paint. Again, I'm just adding it to the corners because that's the sort of flow I want across my spread. I'm now going to use some stamps to add some background texture, and this is one of my favourite stamp sets from Craftascope. It's such a card, and the reason I like it so much is because it's got all these lovely little sort of filler stamps, texture stamps, that you can really use to build up your backgrounds. I picked 3 stamps that all layer up really nicely as well, and I'm using archival inks because they are brilliant for stamping over acrylic paint and really good for journaling. I also like the fact that you can buy the little mini sizes. This means that I can get more for my money, because I don't really want full-size pads. I like to have a selection of colours rather than the big sizes. I started with the biggest shape with, I think it was the Mermaid Lagoon archival. Then I added the medium sized stamp using the fuchsia pink, and as well as stamping it over the top of the original bigger stamp, I've also added some extra stamping with it around the page. And then I'm finishing these little shapes with the tiny stamp with the orange. I think it's monarch orange, but I'm not 100% sure. When I'm stamping, I don't really have a plan. I sort of go by where I think maybe another stamp is needed, but I try not to plan it too much, because I find that actually the randomness of it is what works. I wanted a little bit more texture for for the background. So I'm using the Textures 1 set. I haven't used these as much as I should, and that's why I've got them out, because I really love texture stamps. I'm stamping into the middle of the stamp because I didn't want to catch any of the lines of the edges of the stamp, and I'm sort of bending it as I stamp so that I only get a little bit of texture. And I'm using the blue again because I wanted it to stand out from the background, but not too much. I didn't want it to be black. But now I do want some black. I always like a little bit of black stamping, and this has got to be one of my favourite stamps in that stamp set. It's a definition of craft, but the writing is really small, so you can just use it for the texture. If you notice, I had a little bit of purple tape. That was so I knew where the top was. Now I'm using one of my favourite flowers from the Floral scent collection. I'm using archival black because I want it to be a permanent image on there for me. And as you can see, the stamps stamp absolutely beautifully, really crisp and clear. I give it a little bit of a heat set just so it doesn't smear as I'm cutting it out. I decided for a change to use my archival inks to colour my flowers today. It's not something I often do, but you are able to do it, and I've used in these little sponge finger daubers. I don't have one for every single colour, but I do try to keep my colour groups together, so if there's one that's had blues on, I use it for all blues and pinks and so on and so forth. I added a little bit of the pink around the edges, and it makes a lovely sort of blended purple colour, and then just a little touch of orange in the middle for the centre of the flower. I didn't want to sit there cutting out lots of flowers, so I had actually prepared some in advance, and I realised afterwards that the ones I've prepared I actually stamped with VersaFine and clear embossed, so they made it look a little bit different. I then planned my layout first. I already had in my head an idea of how I wanted to lay out the flowers. I like to have a bigger group on one side and a smaller on the other. It's just the way I always seem to work. And I've also used some of the smaller flowers that are the same shape from the same set. Now finally, I do not like to leave any page without some sort of words. I love sentiments that are sort of quotes, or that could mean lots of different things. Because it was a floral page, I felt that the bloom and grow was ideal, and I love the way that Nick has used this sort of blocky font. I'm cutting them out by hand, and when I cut out by hand, I sort of purposefully don't cut them straight, because I know that there's no way I'm going to cut them perfectly straight with my scissors, so I do it on purpose so it looks like a feature. And again, I'm just using what was left over of the ink on the dauber. Even though it's archival, it does stay wet on there for a little while, and then just to really lift the words so that they'll stand out on the page, I'm using the black archival ink pad just around the edges to make a frame. All the Craftascope products are available on Nick's Etsy shop, and you can find the link down in the description box. Thank you for watching today. I hope you'll take a look at some of my other videos, and if you enjoy them, please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and can I say a big thank you to those that have. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments box below.